The second, another avenue of public input we did was focus groups, and we did 2 of them last week. And as I said, we had a group of 6 folks in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. And so we took them to a planning exercise. And what I did is I said, tell me what the most important areas of concern are here in North Shore. And this is the list that they told me. Beach nourishment, you're going to hear that again. Flooding and drainage. But I was telling them, where in Eastern North Carolina is that not a major issue? But still, they identified it. Wastewater, traffic congestion, the golf course, aesthetics, natural environment, communication with part-time residents, taxes, structure and rate, public access parking, demographics, changing demographics, family entertainment. I next asked them to prioritize that list of issues. And what came out in the top 5, and just keep in mind, this is what this particular group of 6 folks told me. Beach nourishment was number 1. It was the most popular one. The second most popular one was flooding and drainage. Third was wastewater, traffic congestion, and then finally the country club and golf course. What I did was ask them to help me develop some goals and objectives. Goals being a broad statement of direction, and objective being something measurable where we can track the progress on the goal. And we did that. In the second group, I had a smaller group to work with. I think they were primarily permanent residents. And the areas they identified were the tax rate structure, crosswalk, and when I say crosswalk, they were specifically talking about a crosswalk across from the Hampton Inn up there. And Trey and I were looking at it as we were riding into town. I guess there's a public beach access, but it's probably maybe a half block or a block up from the Hampton Inn. Sidewalk and underground utilities. And I asked him to go through a similar process, and what they did was talked about the tax rate structure, about making sure the town has good fiscal responsibility and management, something that's going to come out big in the survey results in a moment. The crosswalk at Oak Leaf Drive, and the sidewalk along Highway 58. That was what these 2 focus groups told me was important. Yes, sir.
Profile of focus group number 1 was what? You said primary residents in the second group.
How would you profile them, Scott? There were some business owners?
There were. The first group had the country club for sure. It had someone from one of the property management companies. It had, it had a couple of folks, I think, from someone from Knoll Village.
What, 6 people?
It had 6 people.
Yeah.
There were a couple people in there I didn't recognize. I think 2 were from some of the smaller homeowners associations, and then the rest. And the Trinity Center. The Trinity Center was in that meeting.
That's right.
And the what?
The Trinity Center.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't profile them because I couldn't really remember exactly what you would say they represented.
Yeah.
It was kind of a mix there.
Mm-hmm.
The second one was primarily permanent residents.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just another level of public input and a different planning session that we did with those. Any questions about those before we move on to the survey results? Now, I'll start out. You guys had 380 responses to your survey. So how does that relate? How do you calculate a response rate with that? Well, if I look at your population of 1,339 people in 2010, that's 28% of your population that responded. If I look at the number of households being a group living in a dwelling, not necessarily a family, but living much like a family, where you have 653, we have a 58% response rate for households. But keep in mind that it was an online survey, and there was probably opportunities and probably instances where 2 or more members of a household responded to the survey. If I look at your total housing units, 2,291 total housing units in the town, your response rate is a little bit under 17%. So regardless, the lowest response rate that you could say you probably had was 17%. The highest was probably close to 60%. So it really depends on what benchmark you use for your response rate there. You guys are a little different than towns we're accustomed to working with because you've got a lot of, you've got a lot more housing out there that's not permanently occupied than some of our other communities. So usually we look at the population, but you guys can use any of those benchmarks.
Excuse me, what was the 58%? What did they represent?
58% was number of households, folks living in a dwelling as a unit. Permanent resident.
Permanent resident.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So you're about 58% if you look at the number of households. And real quickly, I'll go through these and we can discuss that, the results of it. First, it was 15 questions or so on the survey. And you guys saw the survey and hope you all filled it out. But we asked first question, what's your relationship to Pine Knoll Shores? Full-time resident, part-time resident, property owner, renter, other. Full-time residents, 50% of our respondents were 50% were full-time residents. 35% were part-time residents. Property owner, 42%. Looking back, that may have been a little confusing because we asked you to check all that applied. And so I don't know that we got a good representation of property owners there, but we have a good breakdown of full-time versus part-time resident. How many years you've been a property owner or renter here in Pine Knoll Shores? 2/3 of the respondents have been here 11 years or more. What's your age? 85% of the respondents were 50 years old or older, mature. We also asked, if you're not a full-time resident, how much of your year spent here in Pine Knoll Shores? And 40% of folks who aren't full-time residents spend 6 to 12 weeks in Pine Knoll Shores a year. We asked, do you anticipate becoming a full-time resident in Pine Knoll Shores? The answer to this really surprised me, not knowing your community very well. 60% said no. And we asked, if you said no, why? And there really wasn't a consensus of why, other than what we heard was my property is a second vacation home, and I have a full-time life in where I'm a full-time resident. I don't want to pick on Raleigh, but I saw probably 10 or so responses say, I live in Raleigh, my kids live in Raleigh, I'm probably going to stay in Raleigh.
Yeah, the other side of that, though, in question 5, 41% of the part-timers now are saying they would retire.
Very
good.
Good.
That's a high.
Yeah, that's close to 50%.
I think many of the people in this room started out as a part-timer and now are full-timers. So, I mean, if 41% of that population out there is thinking about retiring here, that's a good number.
It's a very good point. Me as an outsider, I looked at that question and I said, well, if they own a home there, everybody's going to retire there. But I was surprised that it was kind of split on that. Yes, sir.
To me, one of the reasons I think we asked this question was to get an idea of what our population may do in the future, and this is showing that it may stabilize. This is not that far off from where we are right now. So if this trend continues or if the survey is accurate, it may provide a pretty good indication that, okay, we're going to be in that 60 to 70% second homeowners, but maybe not stray too far outside that.
You said the average age was 50 plus.
85%. Yeah, 85% of the respondents was 50 plus.
So 40% of those may be planning on coming here, correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
About half of them.
But we also asked, do you recommend family and friends buying property here? And over 90%,
Yeah, it is.
close to 95% said yes. The 5 or 6% that said no, there wasn't I didn't see a real consensus of why.
That was because you put family in.
Maybe so.
They come here to get away from it.
Yeah. Which also means the internal marketing is doing very, very well.
Our next question was, what homeowner association do you belong to? And I've got a list of 380 responses. And PKA could also be Pine Knoll Association, is that right? Or Pine Knoll. Anyway, we've got to go back and recount some of those, the way folks wrote those out. But about 50% of the respondents were PKA.
If I may, I just, one humorous comment, because we get mainly full-timers in here. You folks would not believe the degree that the 68% who don't live here don't know what homeowner association they're in. I mean, they don't know, they have to call our guys, so I wouldn't.
There's a fair number of those.
I would not,
don't know.
I would not, unless you have it broken down by full-time. Grady, they all know they work for you, or would live under you, but for the rest of the 68% PKA, Pikesco, and all the condo units that aren't under Grady, don't know.
And that's a good point. And we can, for our more detailed analysis, do that. We'll pull out part-time resident versus full-time and see, how folks answered. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, because I did a little bit about that. 12% of the respondents were from Beacons Reach, or at least they said they were, and 10% were from Pikesco. And with the others, less than 10%. So let's get on to the good stuff. Let's see. Our next question, as a planner, I think it's probably one of the most important questions, is what do you think the 5 key areas of interest over the next 5 years in Pine Knoll Shores should be? Here's what we heard. Let's see. First was beach nourishment. 62% of folks said that was most important. Second was infrastructure, streets and public facilities. Third was fiscal and financial planning. Fourth was taxes. Fifth was parks and recreation. There was a tie for 6. 6 was residential focus on the town and police and fire services. Those were the key areas. Our next question asks you the 3 biggest things that Pine Knoll Shores could do to improve your quality of life. And we had a scale of 1, 2, 3, 1 being most important. And let's see, first place was other. And there's a whole list of comments of what other was. And I want to be careful how I say this, but by and large, when I looked at it, I saw the word sidewalk a lot. So what I got from that was sidewalks was very important to the folks there who wrote in other. The second was more parks and recreation. There was a 4-way tie for third. In order, it was reduce traffic speeds, improve communication with the town's leadership, crime prevention, and more sound access. Those were the 3 biggest things that Pine Knoll Shores can do to improve your quality of life. Next question, similar to that, but we asked what's important to you in Pine Knoll Shores? Yes, sir.
What you just said does not correspond with what's here on question 11.
Okay, well let me get through this and we can come back and maybe discuss that.
No, but maybe you have a different level of data than is here. Like the 135 responses here were for crime prevention. That was number 1. Number 2 was parks and recreation. Number 3 was post-disaster planning. And the other was down like in the 4th position or so. So maybe it's a different, do I have a...
No.
Question 11. I'm looking at question 11. It's just a little confusing.
What I did, I looked at the average, the response rate. 1, and we're playing golf there, 1 being the best score, 3 being a higher score. And that's how I pulled that
Oh,
up.
you were looking down the number 1 column.
Yes.
Got it. All right. Well, I was
Yeah.
looking at it differently.
So
Thank you.
as I said, as I started this, I just took a look at this data yesterday. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. This is my first glance at it, and certainly as we look at it deeper, we'll see things like you're pointing out. But that was what I saw when I did that. Yes, sir.
Just trying to...
I know when you come back to finally rating these, you'll have a chance for more analysis. You'll use some sort of ranking scale, right? So you'll weight 1s as like 3 points. You'll rate 2s as 2 points. You'll rate 3s as 1 point. And then you can point total based on raw score and wind up with a rough approximation of where the greatest weight.
That sounds good, and I'm going to sit down with you when we do that.
That's
volunteering.
Yeah.
Go ahead and start back.
I did it.
Sounds great. Thank you for volunteering.
Can you have that done by 11?
I did it with some of the prelim results since you shared those with me earlier. So
See, that just echoes that volunteerism that you have in the committee.
Exactly.
Stepped right up there.
Yeah. So, and John and the rest of the committee, take with a grain of salt what I'm saying, because that was my first glance at it, and I just used those. I grabbed out the low scores there as most important, and that was what I
Okay,
gave.
that's okay.
Let's see. Where are we? What's important to you in Pine North Shores? The beach was most important. The environment was second. Let's see. There was other. It was also closely right below that was the category of other. And the two words I saw when I looked at the list of things under other were sidewalks and waterways. Third was safety. Fourth was dedicated public officials and professional staff who volunteered to help me figure out the rating system. And fifth was residential community. Amenities and activities you use the most here at Pine North Shores or most frequently. Beach access, going to the beach was number 1. 2, walking and running. 3, the Shoreline newsletter. 4, the library. And 5, homeowner association parks and marinas. What the next question, what amenities and activities do you wish were available that are currently not? A lot of responses there, but once again, what really caught my eye was sidewalks and bike paths. And let's see that. And then our last question was ask for comments, an open-ended question of anything that we didn't ask that folks wrote in. And we have probably another 19 or 15 or 20 so pages of different comments that we can take a look at. But I didn't see anything that really jumped out there that I could say I heard this 55 times or something like that. Anyway, that's my first glance at your survey results that I looked at yesterday when we closed the survey. So, as I said, take these with a grain of salt. There obviously need some more detailed scrutiny. But that was what the 380 folks responded with in the survey. Yes, sir.
Scott, are there other questions here that you can do a value analysis?
Yes, absolutely. Any of those where we have the scale?
The second question I have is back on our stakeholders. Did we make contact with the forest ranger on the Roosevelt? And so we've got some of his information.
He was one of our interviewees.
Good.
I should get you a comprehensive list of who we interviewed, but I can do that.
Questions, comments, criticism? Attaboys?
Attaboy, good job.
One of the things that's interesting to me that I don't know how this is going to fall out in our analysis, but it's the most divisive issue I thought was where we stand as a vacation destination. That was the one where there were people who were polarized. It was either not important or very important, and a little bit in the middle. That's just interesting.
But if you look at the town, Pine Knoll Boulevard, look west, and you see one community. Look east, and you see another community. In reality, and that's got to be reflected in here if we do that.
Yeah.
One thing before I have any more discussion, one thing I did want to point out is I did a quick analysis of pulled out full-time residents versus part-time residents. I was like, all right, because surely there's going to be some differences here. And remember that full-time residents answer 2 to 1 amount of surveys as part-time residents. And there's probably some differences in here, but I didn't see anything major. My first glance at it is that full-time and part-time residents are pretty much in line on what they thought was generally important in the town. So we'll do some more analysis with that and give you some more detailed stuff. But your part-time and your full-time people are pretty much in line.
I want to say for the group, planning group, I really agree with what Vince said. 41% of the part-time owners saying they're going to live here today is huge to me. And it's good to hear a number that we can back up, because I've said anecdotally, I meet people at the front desk all the time who come in skipping and jumping because they've owned for 20 years and they've just moved down here full time. 1 or 2 a month, it seems, particularly in the spring and summer. But you know, when we want to look for 30 years from now, that I really believe that when we get to the ultimate strategic plan, that those are the people we need to
we need to listen to everyone, but we really need to listen. That's been the value of this whole effort to me, the recognition of the stakeholder group, of the second homeowner group, because that's the future of the town. That is the future of the town, and very important.
I didn't see any question in there that said, ask those people why they moved here. And that is a very important question. If you want people to move here, especially older people that have owned homes or rented places here, why they decided to move here permanently. I'm one of those people. And the reason I moved here is this place is not commercialized. If you want to commercialize this place, I'm out the door.
Well, I heard that in what he said.
Yeah.
I heard what you just said and what he just briefed.
Actually, I read what you said because you put it in the comments.
I mean, if I wanted Myrtle Beach, I would move to Myrtle Beach.
The technical term someone used is they don't want razzmatazz here.
No, I don't. And at the same time, I don't want the government of this town to sit there and say, well, maybe we do want fitness centers or pools. Well, you know what? That costs money, and it costs money to maintain. If I want that, I can go to Gold's Gym, or I can go to the Y, or something to that effect.
Put a pool in your yard.
So I like it because it's a nice quiet town. I'm not going to have a McDonald's building up next to me. And if it did, like I said, I'm out the door.
It's a veritable paradise. Let's just call it what it is.
That's true. There aren't many communities like this up and down the East Coast and in the Southeast. I mean, I've traveled quite a bit, and I've been up and down, and there aren't many like Pine Hill Shores. I think we can safely say that. And that's why it's so important to look at, you know, we may not have the amenities we want right in the town, nor do we want them or need them, but, you know, looking at these other initiatives that we're doing, you know, that could be, you know, some food for their development to do what they want to do. And, you know, it's not all that far away, but yet there may be something, you know, I have to correct one thing. Sidewalks, when we talk about sidewalks, I'm not saying concrete. So I'm just saying a sidewalk, a walk on the side could be, you know, pervious surface, that kind. I mean, there's, you know, 10,000 things you can do there. But when we say sidewalks, it's not concrete. But, you know, I think it's just, you know, some very, very interesting stuff in here.
One of the things we didn't talk about is the number of houses for sale and how the economic situation has provided an avenue for people who would normally never be able to buy here, have the opportunity to buy here. Completely different demographic than is here, and it's creating some public safety issues. And I don't believe that that's going to go away with the number of houses that are for sale.
Economics is what drives demographics here.
That's exactly
no question
right.
about it. A majority of when you look at the age of the folks in town, you'll see that a lot of those people from that generation have pensions. Go out and see how many places have pensions now, and they're hard to come by. So the future is going to change based on economics, as it always does. And the number of houses on the market and the prices coming down is bringing in younger people.
And a different type of people
Sure.
than have ever been here before.
And that's hurting our volunteerism, because quite often they're younger and they're working a job and raising 2 kids and doing this and going to soccer games. And one of the commonalities or notes I saw common throughout this was people said we needed more volunteers, a younger population. People said we needed a younger population. And they had those concerns because they're worried about the future of the town, not just where we are today and not 5 years, but 20, 30 years down the road. I thought that was interesting, that you're worried about a town that you may not even be in, where it is at that point. So I thought that was interesting too.
Many of us won't be here. Yeah, that's the point.
Many of us will.